This is CounselCast, part of the Legal Talk Network, and I'm your host, Karin Conroy. When you face a complex case outside your expertise, you bring in a co-counsel for next-level results. When you want to engage, expand, and elevate your firm, you bring in a marketing co-counsel. In this podcast, I bring in marketing experts who each answer one big question to help your firm achieve more. Here's today's guest.
Hey there, I'm Caleb Roche with C. Roche Consulting, where we combine strategy with implementation and focus on building long-term customers through data-driven decision-making. With experience working with both small and large companies, we have the experience to help businesses create strategic marketing plans that's focused specifically on businesses' strengths, not just a one-size-fits-all template-based strategy.
Oh, that's good. That is tied right into the topic. I love that intro because I feel like I heard the word strategy at least 3 times, maybe 4.
Yeah, that's not keyword stuffing, I promise. It's actually real.
No, that's perfect. I'm okay with the keyword stuffing right now.
Yeah.
So Caleb, this is going to be a great episode because this is something that I think a lot of people are mystified about, and so they skip it over. They skip over it. And it's such a disaster when you skip over it and you realize I get so many firms coming to me and after the fact, and then we have to rebuild it. So I'm kind of alluding to all of this, but the topic and the big question for today is, what is the anatomy of a marketing strategy? So we are focused this quarter on strategy, and we are talking about marketing and marketing strategy and how does it work and why do you need it and everything. But today we're going to talk about the anatomy of it. What are the pieces of it? What does it mean? What does that all translate to? But first, let's talk about why. Why do we need to start with the strategy?
Oh, this is a question that I can't answer. Just kidding. Yeah, just
okay,
kidding.
let's edit that out.
No. Well, one of the things that really drives strategy, we see that within our clients, and I'm assuming you're seeing across your clients as well, is a lot of businesses like to operate their marketing kind of, shoot from the hip. And so when you don't have a strategy, everything seems to not be cohesive and everything's kind of all over the board. So you might be posting a little bit on social media, you might be running some ads, but what most people don't seem to understand on the marketing side is it all has to play in one side of things. And so, the baseball team doesn't just have the one star player that makes them win every game. You have the other people that are a part of the team that contribute to everything. And so, I don't know how good that analogy was, but
I think
we're going to
that's
roll
so
with it.
Good because
we're going to roll with it.
let me help you out because I feel like, let's imagine if you did just have that one star player. You have so much risk and you have so much everything riding on all of your eggs in that one basket. And I see this sometimes where, especially I'm sure with, you hear this too with SEO. Firms will say, and they approach me and they come in and they're like, nothing's working. Our firm is, we're losing everything to our competitor. Apparently what I hear out in the world, I need SEO. Apparently this is the Band-Aid that will fix all Band-Aids. It's the golden ticket. It's whatever, along the lines of that star player. We're just going to throw all of our plans and money and thoughts into SEO, without doing anything around it, with no plan. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just do that. So I think that is kind of a good analogy.
It is. And there's a couple of different ways that you could take it, especially with this analogy. You look at it as not only can you not have the one star player, you always have to have the things in the background that work really well together, which I think makes a big piece. Because let's say SEO does work for you, but what happens? Let's say we don't expect Google to ever go down, but what happens if Google ever goes down or there's a competitor? You've invested all these resources and then you don't have a channel. Or perfect example, the Facebook outage. I forget how long ago that was, but the Facebook outage that happened, you couldn't post on social media. If you're relying solely on social media and you don't have a newsletter, list built up, how are you going to message to clients? Hey, we're not open today. Or, if anything happens like that, that's really a detrimental effect potentially towards your practice. And so not only on that side, but then the strategic planning element of a marketing plan as well is a firm needs to establish what milestones we're going to have within our marketing side. Because as you know, search engine optimization, it's not something that you press a light bulb and it pops up and it turns on. It's a long-term effect. So how do you supplement, short-term growth with a long-term strategy? And so are you going to implement a newsletter? And how are you, are you going to start doing social media posts? But then the other piece of it too is you have to be very strategic. What social posts are you going to be doing? Do they align with the newsletter? And it seems like a lot of firms like to jump into it and say, we need everything all at once. But sometimes, like what we were talking about earlier, is you sometimes have to set milestones and say, let's get our social media perfect. Let's establish what we're going to be posting. Let's use that to drive decision making across an email newsletter. Or let's identify trends as we're building that across hashtags and everything to understand what are people searching on Google and how can we implement that on SEO and Google Ads. So I think there's a lot of different pieces at play within the anatomy of a strategy that I think all combine to why you actually do it. Because it's like so a client going to court on their own. If you show up and say, I'm going to represent myself with no strategy in mind, and they ask the first question, and you don't know the procedure and you don't know how they don't know. It's like, from a practice perspective, they would be calling a lawyer right after and saying, I screwed myself. I need to call you right now. So same perspective on the marketing side.
Yeah. And I actually have an equivalent that I see all the time. And maybe you see this too, but I have clients approach me and say, why shouldn't I use Squarespace or Wix or, do a website on my own? And my response every single time, what I always say is do it. Go and try that out, because in this phone call or this conversation or whatever we're talking about, I'm not going to convince you that that's not the right approach. If you're asking that question, you're halfway sold on that idea. So you go try that out. And I would say well over 70 to 80% of the time, 6 months down the road, I hear from them again. It's like, okay, well, I learned the lesson the hard way. So you can make that decision. You can decide, okay, I need to go through every hard lesson that I'm going to learn in business the hard way, or I'm going to recognize that there's experts out there that I need to bring in so that I can expedite my success.
Yep. When it's like the same, and same analogy across law, why wouldn't a client use LegalZoom? It's so convenient. They can go online. They can press it. It's affordable. But there's so many different categories that people don't look at when they're operating off of that. They've done a great job advertising. We're cheap, easy. But then if you think of the legal implications, a long-term strategy, if you put the wrong contract in place, you don't have the right clause from a professional building that, there's the $50 that you save, or $50 that you spent that, let's say you saved $1,000. What happens now when you get sued for $3,000 or $20,000 or $1 million? Like it becomes that long term. So investing in the right systems and strategies is super important across all different channels. Yeah.
The other comment I was going to make before we start digging into the actual anatomy of the strategy is that if you kind of throw all your eggs in the one basket, and let's say you decide that's social media, and you develop this massive account, it's doing well. You don't own that account. You don't own your followers. You don't own any part of it. So they can shut you down at any point and you're done. And so if a lot of firms do some decent social media, but if you don't have a process for owning those leads and pulling them to your own website and your own email list and your own list that you do own, you're really setting yourself up for huge risk.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You don't own any channel typically. And that's why you always have to have backups and email newsletters and email all your CRM information and all the CRM information. You want to be doing backups as well, because you don't own that information as well, unless you have it in an Excel file or a PDF or something like that.
Yeah, and thinking about your strategy in terms of all of those different channels, most channels, there's a part that you don't own. Even if you have a certain referral, say you have a referral source. Let's say you work with a bunch of financial planners and they send you a bunch of potential clients. You don't own that either, unless you have some exclusive contract in place with them, which most people don't. They could suddenly decide that they don't really like you anymore and they're going to send their referrals to the other guy. So thinking in terms of all of those sources as, having risk and maybe not existing forever, so that you kind of have a nice, well-rounded approach, is the healthiest, most sustainable way to consider it. So let's talk that through. So what is a well-rounded approach? What are these pieces of marketing strategy, the anatomy, so that we are tying in the title of the show?
I think we're basically like heart surgeons at this point because we're understanding the anatomy, right? We're going to dive into this. So
exactly.
We actually, our firm specifically, kind of bases our strategy off of 3 different elements of a principle written by, and I'm going to mention it later, but my book of choice. I won't disclose it until later.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll leave some mystery.
Yeah. We'll leave some mystery. I know everyone's wondering what book I really love. I know that's everyone's going to listen to the end of this because of that.
That's why I put the book review at the end, because
exactly.
that's the best part.
Yeah, exactly. I won't mention the name. So,
okay. What could it be?
Yeah. Don't skip ahead, please, everyone. I know you're going to. So it contains 3 elements that we kind of look at. So first is the diagnosis. Second is kind of a guiding policy. And then 3 is coherent actions.
Okay.
So we believe in kind of digging into 3 different pieces of a strategy. And we think that builds kind of a really good guiding policy for focused action. And
so let's break it down. What's the first part is diagnosis.
So
what do you do
the first
there?
part is diagnosis. So the big thing is understanding kind of an audit. How are you performing currently? What systems and processes do you have in place? What channels are you on? What is working? What isn't from their perspective? And then diving into the actual numbers. If they're using a case management software, the CRM like Clio or Wallmatics, those types of things. Where are people coming from? Are they coming from referrals? Are they coming from online search? Are they coming from Facebook? Those types of things. What messaging are they using? What does their website look at? Diving into every granular detail that you can and understanding what's working and what isn't. So
I think this is a part, and I don't want to skip to the next part yet, because I think this is a part a lot of people skip over. They're like, yeah, we get a bunch of referrals. Yeah. I already know that. I need to get more. I need more money or whatever. And it's like, until you really lay it out, and I feel like you lay it out and then you go a little deeper and you dig into each one of those and spend an extra minute here, an extra 5 minutes there, really kind of digging in. Are you sure? How many referrals do you think you got in the last month? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Actually, it wasn't referrals. We got 5 people off Facebook. Oh, I didn't really realize that until I spent that extra couple minutes digging in and like really looking at what's happening.
Yep. Well, that's a big thing. A lot of people, they say, well, I found you online. And what does that really mean?
It could mean anything.
It could be Facebook. It could be Twitter.
On their phone.
Yep. And that's the thing. You don't know if they say online, but did someone mention you to them and then they decided to look you up and then they called you? And even the tracking sources, if you set up, UTM parameters and all the call tracking software, if it comes in as Google Organic, is it really Google Organic or did someone hear about you in passing? And so, like you said, it's important to get very granular in the details. Understand who is the referral source that's sending it? Is it John, the financial advisor, or is it X, a CPA? And who is sending? And then also diagnosing farther and saying, why is someone referring more or why isn't someone? What's making this a very effective relationship? And what is going to continue growing that? I think that's more obviously into the policy and action side of things. Yeah. But understanding like what are the key elements of actually what's bringing in the business? Why isn't Google, if you're running Google ads, why isn't Google performing? Are your analytics really good? Do you have a good click-through rate? Is your cost per 1,000 impressions where it needs to be? And again, that's where you don't want to get too granular on this podcast right now, but it's really important to actually look at it and spend the time and actually explore the data. What is the data telling us? We don't want to just say, well, Google tells us that our site is performing really well. We've got good SEO. That's all we need to know.
Bada bing, bada boom. Let's move on. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So is this the phase where you talk about not only where it's coming from, but who you really actually want to work with, or is that in one of the future phases?
So we typically recommend, and I think everyone does it differently. I'm sure you guys probably have a different set and it probably coincides a little bit, but we typically put this in more towards the guiding policy because that actually dictates, in our opinion, what actions you need to take forward. Okay. And so that's where we look at the data and we say, okay, you're getting a lot of leads from Google Organic, but Google Organic is not bringing in the right leads. So
good leads.
If they're a probate lawyer, and let's say they have search terms around criminal defense that they're ranking on. If they're getting a lot of criminal, defense cases coming in. That's man hours that they're reducing because they're getting a lot of calls in. There's a lot of forms. There's a lot of vetting. If they're doing consultations that they're not vetting well on, that's time wasted. And,
it's just waste. From an attorney,
Yeah, and it's billable hours that you could be working on. And so one of the pieces is understanding from each channel. Not only are you getting leads, but how quality are the leads that you're getting? Are you getting
so is that in sorry to interrupt, but is that in the second phase then?
This is
where
still
you're
in the
kind
first
of
phase.
Okay, we're still in the first phase. So we
Yep.
look at where everything's coming from, and then you dig into it even further to say, okay,
Yep.
this is where it's all coming from, but what's good and what's bad in here, right?
Yes, and exactly. So we're going to look at the full picture, 360 view. What are you doing? What do you need to be doing? Like, what do you think? And even asking the questions, what do you think personally is working, and what do you think personally is not? And then digging further, why is that? From your own perception, why is this source doing really well or not? So you can kind of combine the data, because the data can tell us one thing, but we have to combine both personalities and say, from the business side, the personal side, how well do you think this is performing? What does the data tell us? And then combining the two and saying, making sure that the data is not skewed, but also the person isn't skewed at the same time. So combining those is the big piece.
Okay, so I'm going to back up just one step too, because when you're talking about, you're saying, okay, what's working, what's not working. Where do you define what that means? Because what's working for some of my clients is the opposite definition. Like some of them want more of X kind of client. Some of them want more reputation building stuff. They all have different definitions of what that success and those KPIs and those goals are. So where do you define even that step of things before you get to looking at the data to align the data with what that definition of like working means?
Yeah. So from those audits and from the conversations you're having of, from the personal side, from the attorney side, what is a good lead and what isn't, those start to shape the conversations around what are you actually looking for? Because I think when you dive into the data, a lot of firm owners, and even myself, when we do, when we look at our target market every quarter and decide, are we in alignment? Are we moving forward in the right direction? I really think as the business grows, your target market or your ideal client starts to shift slightly. And so it starts to move a little bit. And so that's where you can kind of see the internal side of things of internally, we might be saying this is our best client, but looking at the revenue side, looking at how much, clients are bringing in, what's our cheapest source, combining on ROI, we want to combine and say, okay, your ideal client is, let's say a probate client that, they have established, but they need kind of building out like this, you need to take on the case. Let's say you've got, you can bill a certain amount and you can make a lot from that. But if we look at the data and say 99% of your clients are business litigation clients, how do we, they're bringing in the money, so we still have to focus on that, but how do we shift everything that we're doing into that? And so what we want versus what we have is a completely different story. And that's what leads you into the guiding policy from our perspective of where are you at now, where you want to be, and what do we have to shift or change to get to that point?
Okay, so this may go into that same, that's the second section, right? Guiding policy?
Yep.
Okay, so my next question is, let's say you take a look, and this is not necessarily just looking at the data and the numbers, but looking at like how specific content is performing. So let's say you take a look at how certain content is performing and you say, okay, this content piece is working, quotes around working. This is getting all our traffic, people are coming to it, but it's talking about DUIs, and we do not want to do DUIs anymore. We want to be doing personal injury. And so how do you take a look at things that are happening like that on your site and then, like you were saying, shift the attention and the focus into a different direction?
I think it's honestly a slow roll. It has to be one of those things where I think from a messaging perspective, and I'd love to get your perspective on this because I think this is kind of more of a I guess touchy subject is what you could call it, because some would say go more aggressive and pull everything off and go in a different direction. But from our point of view, from clients' perspective, we want to be very touchy with the content that we're producing and developing. And so if we want to shift into a different direction, I believe personally you have to make it a slow roll. And so you don't want to go too slow where it takes 2 years to not rebrand yourself, but rebrand yourself from a DUI attorney to a personal injury. But I think you have to start moving and shifting, because a dramatic shift in content and changes could reduce your client load, which could provide a negative impact on your business. And so it's like all the other channels. If you look at the data and say one's not performing well and you misidentify data and you misidentify all the statistics, let's say you pull off Google Ads, your business goes down, you've got 10 leads a month, now you're freaking out. And it's the same thing. If you shift and you're known as a DUI attorney and then someone goes to your site and now it's personal injury, I mean, what happens? You don't want to stick on the DUI side too long, but you have to move. And so that's what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it's like what the phrase every marketer uses all day, every day, and every attorney. It depends. But it depends on that client. So, but it all ties back to strategy. So let's say this client approaches us and they are in that position and they are focused really heavily on DUI and they want to, flip over to personal injury. My recommendation would be, unless they have some specific reason, like maybe they had a person in their firm who solely did DUI and they're gone now, and so they can't focus that. Unless you have a reason like that, I would not take DUI off the table entirely. Like, you don't want to remove that whole section of your site and remove that entire approach, because not only are you going to freak out when the numbers dive, but the audience that you're speaking to is going to be like, what is happening over there? It seems like this like whiplash. I don't understand what they're saying. So if you tie it back to your strategy, though, if you have that positioning in your messaging, and your messaging alludes to how you're experts and you know what you're talking about. You've done this for ages. You've got these testimonials that support all of these things, and you understand, people's problems and you know how to solve them. Those are universal topics that you can apply to whatever practice area. So as long as you pull it back and align it with that strategy, you can make those adjustments. But like you're saying, you have to do it kind of incrementally and not completely abandon, just like throw that idea out of a fast moving vehicle going down the freeway. Like, you're going to leave DUI there and continue to retain that traffic while adding in more attention and messaging around that new topic.
Yeah, you can't go from Suits to Better Call Saul or vice versa, right? You can't shift too quick.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's such a good visual. I love that. I'm definitely using that in the future when I start describing.
There's a legal disclaimer that phrase has been trademarked. Please,
I will do that research. I will find out because that's really good positioning too. So just the kind of visuals of picturing Better Call Saul and his approach, and his kind of unique,
Yeah, no judgment if that's the way that you do things.
If it works, as long as it works. If you're doing that and it's a disaster, that's a different kind of thing. But versus Suits, where obviously different positioning, different messaging, different kind of approach, and all of that stuff. So okay, so let's go back. So we are at the second phase of, is it phase or?
I mean, you could call it any. We call them elements. I mean, you can brand them however you want. So on that second element, which is kind of the guiding policy, this is where you really dive into. So we've seen the data. We understand from the client's perspective, from the data perspective, combining everything, what is traditionally working for their practice or for their firm. And then this is going to be the stage where we actually look at, where do we want to go in the future? Okay. And so what is, we want to go, we're at Better Call Saul right now. We're servicing kind of a different set of clients. We want to move more into a corporate level. I want to wear, a $3,000 suit. I want to, those types of things. And the clients that we want to work with are going to be a lot different clientele. Yes. And so this is going to be where we look at, where are you now and where do we need to go now? And so if you are servicing these smaller clients or these different sets of clients, this is going to be the spot where we identify what you actually need to do to get to that next level. And
I would say the majority of people I talk to think we're going to start at that second phase. They think they want to start here, and they've already skipped over that first phase. And how do you even skip to step 2 if you haven't figured that data and that information out about what's happening right now? So
I think
I'm
that's
just going to keep repeating that whole idea. Don't skip
and it's
step 1.
It's the analogy. It's if to put it in layman's terms. I mean, it's essentially like a client going to LegalZoom and using LegalZoom, having a problem come up and saying, "Oh my gosh, I went through the right steps. I had a legal document." An attorney is going to look at that and say, "Okay, on your business side of contract, what are you doing? Are you taking payments? Do you host, for our side, do you host the website? Do you have any client data?" The important questions that you have to ask from their perspective, because they've seen it 3,000 times.
Yeah.
It's the same thing from a marketing perspective that a firm or a practice or, a firm owner has to look at is we have to make sure that the decisions that we're making aren't based off of emotions or what we're thinking.
Yes.
Because if we solely do that, that's going to lead us in the wrong direction. Because our heart will tell us something different than our brain and the data. And again, on the flip side, though, I have to be very careful because data, if we look at just data, that's going to tell us a completely different story. And if we look too far into that, that can lead us down the wrong path as well.
Yeah,
because,
looking at the wrong data. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, if we look holistically at we're getting this set amount of leads, we've got this cost per lead from this channel, it's performing really well. But if those leads are not the leads that we're actually wanting or the direction that we want to go, we can't just look at the data.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes into play of you can't skip step one. And I know everyone says that. You can't skip, and it seems so tedious. The target market, everyone has the documents. Who's your ideal client? Give them a name, Jim. How old are they? How much do they make? Where do they live? It seems so tedious. But one of the things that my experience previous that I always like to kind of inform clients on is these big corporations where we all want to be, we want to be these billion-dollar companies. They spend so much time learning about their customer. It is insane. The amount of resources, time, money that they're throwing at this is absolutely insane. And so we like to look at them and say, wow, they are so smart. They just know every action they take is just, it's incredible. And they have these big agencies. But from my experience, working with a quick service restaurant chain, the second largest private QSR chain in the United States, they have a specific department just for consumer insights. Yeah. And so the products that they develop, they have a culinary team that brings it to the consumer insights department. They spend time researching how soggy is the meat or how soggy is the bun, or does the bun, the lettuce, the tomato, the onion go really well? And so it's the same thing with, with marketing outside of that is you have to do the research and understand what are you doing and how are you tailoring this? We can't skip step one. So long drawn out response to why we can't skip one.
It's good because I think where a lot of people see this is, especially in technology, where you've got these apps, you've got all this stuff happening on your phone, and the amount of research, once again, that has gone into your behaviors, where you're going to click, where we're going to put the button, to the point where people feel almost a little bit like conspiracy theory about it. Like they are reading my mind. They're listening to me. That's research. It's not, nobody's listening to you. Maybe Alexa a little bit, but, but more,
maybe a lot, but
I know, different conversation. But that feeling where they're reading my mind and they already know what I want before I even realize what I want. That's the consumer research. That's knowing who your clients are and then aligning that with a product or a service that fits that need is research. It's not just like guessing and thinking you know it before you go into it.
Well, and I think leading into that as well, just kind of an additional thought is we like to prep our clients and say, because marketing can kind of feel a little, not scary sometimes, but it kind of borders along the lines of, okay, how deep do we go into consumer research and are we making this better for consumers? Like our marketers, are we
evil?
The ones that are evil because are we the ones that are racking up credit card debt in America because we're placing good products in such great marketing? And the one thing that makes me sleep at night, I guess, just kidding. No, what we tell our clients is you have to look at it as the research that you're doing is building a better product for your consumers. And so you're just building an overall better process, better strategy, better system for your client. And so what you're selling them is a need that they have, but you're building the best experience possible. And through that research, that's what happens. So that's what I always like to tell people is it can feel kind of like not slimy, but a little, we're digging into this. Is this ethical? And as long as you're focused on building a better product and a better experience for your consumer, I think that's the shift in mindset that you have to have.
And that's where Seth Godin talks about too, is you have to be making things better. You have to be solving those problems. And I feel like that aligns so easily with lawyers and law firms. They are not just selling a widget. They are really honestly and truly helping people fix problems in their lives or do things better, but absolutely solving problems and unmet needs. So it's not just like, hey, here's another little plastic thing from China that I want to sell you. It's you have a problem and I'm here to help you solve it. Yeah.
And I think positioning goes into that as well, which kind of goes into the guiding policy is the perfect example, Better Call Saul versus Suits. I mean,
Yeah.
people are probably going to get tired of hearing this.
That's all right.
I'm so glad.
It'll be memorable.
It makes me happy. Yeah. So, if you think about the two experiences, if you think about it from a client's perspective, if we were to hire Better Call Saul, I'm assuming we'd walk into his office at the nail salon and, the couch probably stinks and we probably wouldn't even be at the office. Yeah. And he'd probably pull out a bottle of water from his mini fridge that he keeps his, everything in. And so, that experience, that might appeal towards a certain client, which doesn't make it bad. Like that's the client. And so on the Suits approach as well, you've got that same thing. You've probably got an executive assistant that meets at the door. You've got an office prepped with the logo of the company that you're meeting with. And you've got the, the nice bottled water. It's probably Essentia. It's not a Dasani, those types of things. And so and neither of those are bad approaches as long as it fits within what your clients are looking for. Because you don't want to have the Better Call Saul positioning and focus on having the Suits experience. You're not going to drive the right clientele and vice versa. And so I think little shifts in positioning and where you're looking at the actual policy side, are you doing the right actions, even the little things as the right placements of products, the right actual products in your firm? Yeah. Are you positioned properly for your target client?
And I think that's such a great example and visual because positioning is where it makes all of those decisions easier. So as you're deciding, okay, can I just go pick up that couch that I saw in the alley that's sort of, 40 years old and sticky and throw that in my lobby? Will that work? Or not. And if you have that Better Call Saul positioning, fine. That does not matter to that client. If you have the Suits positioning and you're in some glass tower in a downtown metropolis and you throw that disgusting couch in your lobby, think about how weird that's going to feel to a client who walks in. But it's the same for all of those marketing decisions. I can't tell you how many websites I've seen where the beginning and the main heading area starts out strong. And then as I scroll, I'm like, what is that? What is this weird icon? What are they doing there? That has nothing to do with the feeling and the look that I had up at the top. So once again, it makes all of those decisions easier where you look at that positioning, you've defined that, you kind of create this template, and then you're saying, okay, as I make these future decisions, let me hold it up against that. And do they line up, or does that seem really wrong and off?
Yeah, and I think, the piece of that too, perfect example diving further into that is, that's where all these guiding policies really come into play together. And that's why you have to build this strategy from the ground up, because if you think about it, let's say you hire a Facebook ad strategist. All they do is Facebook ads. They're incredible at driving Facebook ads, driving Facebook leads, call to actions, those types of things. So they've set up these perfect ads that are driving to your law firm website. Now, let's say your legal website is from 2002. So, you've got HTML and it pops up with a big picture and it has text on the picture for the first time.
Spinning hamsters.
Yeah, spinning hamsters. And then the wheel pops up that says, enter our newsletter and win a giveaway. And, and then you go to the headshots and it's from the 60-year-old firm owner. He's 21 in the picture. And so now,
from law school.
Yeah, he's from law school. And, the text says on there, that this is our experience and it doesn't have anything. So you've driven all these Facebook leads and done all this stuff. And then at the end of the day, they go to the website and now they're not going to actually take action because the website is just
a mess.
Not good. But then on the flip side, if you develop and you hire this perfect website designer that's building this website that has scroll images and parallax and everything, but then you're trying Facebook ads on your own that aren't tailored, you're not even getting people to the website now. You have this great website, but you don't have the actual ads to drive them in. So that cohesive strategy, it as easy as just to think about, I just need more leads. I need more Facebook ads. I need more. It all comes together to where it has to be a cohesive strategy.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like that leads into the third, whatever we're calling these things.
Coherent actions.
Yes.
Phase element 3. This is what everyone's been waiting for outside the book recommendation, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think this is everyone.
We're leading up to the book recommendation eventually.
Yeah. Don't worry, guys. We're getting there. Okay. So that kind of what steps into the coherent actions of what are the actual actions that you need to be taking and what are the timelines and milestones that we need to hit? Because as you know, there's a couple different variables that come into play. You have to make sure that you account for different variables that come into play. Let's say you're planning to have a photo shoot and you want a nice photo shoot for your clients. And then that leads into, now we can develop social media posts that are actually focused on, content around us. And it's not just stock images or just icons or anything like that. But let's say someone gets sick. Now the photo shoot gets moved back 2 weeks. There's so many moving parts to a marketing strategy that you have to set benchmarks and say, we're going to hold ourselves accountable to this. But the strategy has to be flexible at the same time, because you never know when the economy hits differently. And there's so many different pieces that have to be taken into account. So what we do in that coherent policy or the coherent actions is, what actions do we need to take in the next quarter, the next 4 quarters, but quarterly and monthly? What things are we going to put in place? And then what things are we able to pivot on if something ever happens? So,
where's our flexibility?
Yeah, where's our flexibility? Because let's say, because think about it, like during November, there's like things that we don't think about. So November ads, you've got election season. Ads are going to be much more expensive. The numbers that we're going to see, it's going to be harder to advertise. It's harder to get things approved. Things are just a little bit more expensive. And then think about December. Now you've got shopping season. And so we can build this plan off of our thoughts. Okay, quarter 1, we're going to do X. Quarter 2, we're going to do this. Quarter 3. Well, if we're in January and we're forecasting quarter 4 to be our big advertising month, we get to quarter 4 and say, wait, hold on. We gotta prepare for this. This might not perform as well as we think. And so as much as you can plan for that in advance, there's certain things that you don't think about, or there's certain things that you really don't. When you get granular into the details, you start building that out, you get to the point and say, we need to pivot here. We need to prepare for this. And so I think that makes a big piece of the strategy is we want to set timelines. We want to set accountability, but at the same time, we have to be flexible, because if we just try to cram all of this and do it at the same time, it's not going to work.
And force it. Because I think that's really important and such a critical piece for people to focus on, that piece of flexibility. Because, you can plan as much as you want, but you never know exactly how things are going to play out. I use the example all the time. I was talking to clients towards the end of 2019, planning for 2020. There's no way our marketing plans had any accountability for us all working from home and trying to homeschool our kids that year. And the messaging changed significantly. I was talking to someone who was talking to high-level messaging experts that were like in Fortune 500 companies, and talking about the shift of focus and attention in 2020 went from profit and response and all of this stuff to the number one thing people cared about was their community. Knowing that their families were taken care of, profit and talking about, discounts and all that seemed offensive. And so any messaging work that people had done at the end of 2019 needed to be scrapped, basically. And if you don't have that flexibility built in, you're going to falter and make huge mistakes where, that's going to make you look really bad.
I know. And that's the thing. I think that's where you have to be prepared to pivot, because if you're so focused on just, hey, we've built this plan, it's going to work really well. The companies that are pushing out the profit side, I mean, they're going to get slammed at that point, and so you also have to think about it from like a PR standpoint. And that's where I think, guiding to the entire, like, why is a marketing strategy important? Why do we have to look at the anatomy of it? Why do we have to look at the different pieces? Because we're looking at it from a holistic approach, that there has to be flexibility. There has to be buffer built in for PR. There's so many moving parts that as a firm owner, as someone at a firm, those types of things, unless you have an internal marketing department, you can't do that on your own. I mean, you can, and power to you if you can. But from a marketing expert, I mean, that's practically like walking into court unprepared, hoping that we're just going to, as questions come up, we're going to prepare for those when they're answering it, and let's hope that works.
Crossing your fingers and praying is not a strategy.
Someone might be able to pivot. You might have someone that's really good at articulating words very last minute, and you'll have those anomalies. But I think the basis of it is that's the 1%, that you can't base all of your decisions off that 1%.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I feel like this is a good moment to shift to the book review. the part everyone has been waiting for.
Can we put this behind a paywall? Because I think this is really important. I don't know. I
should. After you trademark the Suits versus Better Call Saul option, I'll put this behind a paywall.
Gosh, yeah, it's terrible.
So what's the book?
The book is
drum roll. I should add the drum roll.
Yeah.
I know they have sound effects in here somewhere, but by the time I find them, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. It'll just lead like 10 minutes later. I finally reveal the book. I just keep walking around the anatomy of a marketing strategy over and over.
Exactly. We've kind of missed the moment.
The book is written by Richard Remolt, and his book is called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy.
Ooh, that sounds like it ties right in.
It does. It's amazing. He wrote it just for us on this podcast.
Perfect. So good timing.
One of the key elements that I love about it is he talks about like a paragon of organizational strategy is he walks readers through like the many landmines that lie in wait during leaderships and how the missteps that they can take in strategy. Because
that's good.
At its core, strategy is like the identification of critical factors in a situation. Okay. And then it's outside of that, it's a skillful design of coordinated actions to deal with said factors.
Okay, so, let's go back because that I feel like was a really important part. The strategy is the identification of critical factors
in a situation.
Okay.
Yep.
So figuring out not just what's happening, but what are the critical factors?
Yep. And then outside of that, the skillful design of an actual coordinated action to deal with those said factors.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I love that.
Because what it does is it requires awareness of one's resources and capabilities and a sharp understanding of one's industry and its surrounding space, because that's where you can pivot.
That's so good because I can't tell you the number of firms that I talk to where they are either in a big city or they're just outside of a big city. They're small to mid-size, and they don't want to go head to head with these giant firms because first of all, their budgets aren't the same. And second of all, they do different things and they have a different approach. And so this is how you do that. This is how you figure out, okay, where do I fit in this market in a unique place that's different from that? And how do I carve out my own strategy where I'm doing my own thing and I'm not trying to compete with them? They're doing a totally different thing. They have a totally different approach. And my marketing budget is going to align with what I need, not where I'm just trying to chase them.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of the book, because, something that he says, direct quotes, I'm going to pull from the book, is while there's so much to learn, fundamentally strategy is a very difficult legwork and not easily replaced with template style vision building or any other form of pseudo strategy. And that's where, kind of like what we talked about in our company, the template-based strategy, it sounds great in perspective, but it doesn't take into account all the different factors that we discussed, all the environmental factors, all the little things that we don't take into account. And that's why, defining a good strategy versus a bad strategy is so, so important. And that's where, this book, you have to read it if you don't.
Yeah, it sounds so good. And the idea of a template-based strategy is kind of an oxymoron, because trying to be unique and have your own strategy and then apply it within a template, what how does that even make any sense? That's the opposite of what you're trying to do there.
I agree. So that's where it becomes such a big piece, because the template based strategies, they're cheaper, they're easier, but there's a reason why everything is cheaper, easier. And while it might be better for a firm that's just starting and they don't have the resources to invest, you have to be so careful, because even the little things that you do when you're starting out and you make the wrong decision, they're going to affect you in the long term.
Yeah, it's exponential. And I would argue that strategy is even more important when you're starting out to get you on the right path and just kind of get the growth off in the right direction, because you always think you're going to have time down the road to come back and do it the right way, where that never happens. It's starting out and investing appropriately and doing it the right way the first time is going to pay off so many times over in the long term. So I really think that, doing the strategy right from the beginning is critical. It's like a good foundation of a house. You don't want to have to go back and rebuild the walls. Come on.
Yeah. And you don't want to, the one thing that I think marketing gets overlooked is, it's like if you were building a custom house and you overlook so the plumbing, you don't see the plumbing. You don't you flush the toilets, you turn on the water, you do the shower, but it doesn't really matter where they go. And maybe we don't need this specific pipe and maybe we can cut out some things, and it doesn't affect the overall look of it. But on the back end, like, and when you're not getting water to your shower, and that's like the, like what you need,
or the toilet's not flushing
the
correctly,
toilet's flushing,
it's a
backing
problem.
up because you used the PVC pipe that couldn't handle, or you had some guy that kind of knew how to do PVC pipe, but he wasn't a plumber. Like, it works for a minute, but then the minute that it goes wrong, now you've got to tear up, flooring. And so now, like, if you think about it from a research perspective, especially in marketing, when you're investing in this and you're going with maybe the easier option, the cheaper option, it might seem good in the short run. Hey, it's going to work really well with our budgets. It's going to work well with what we need. If you go down the wrong direction, you find the wrong person, when that pipe bursts or that marketing strategy doesn't work, not only do you have to pull back and look at where that came from and spend a bunch more time and money looking at that, but now you've got to rebuild it from scratch. Yep. So you're burning it from the ground, and then you have to rebuild it. So that's where
I just really keep wanting to say the word shit show, like with the relation.
I didn't know what listeners. So I avoided that term. But
that's okay. Yeah. But I feel like it ties in perfectly with the plumbing and the backing up, and then like hiring the wrong person and having to redo all of that. It's just such a literal mess in either situation that you don't want to do. You don't want to deal with. Like, it's just yuck, gross, and that's all the way around.
If I had to make one more point, like my last point ever, like my dying point would be, that's where it comes into play of who you hire is so important, especially on the marketing side, because you want to research, you want to do your due diligence just like you do for your clients. And so what are the parameters that you're setting for your marketing consultant or the company that you're hiring, and what are they actually going to deliver? What are their experiences? And not just hiring the first person that comes across the way. And that's what we tell our clients is vet us, vet our work, look at other options if you want. Like, don't just hire the first person that comes across that has a good idea. Like, look at the overarching plan as well.
So I was going to ask you, what is one thing that that works? Is that what you would say?
That's what I would say. I jumped ahead and I skipped that question. So
that's okay. Yes. Okay, so one thing that that works, hire the right person, vet all the different options, know what you're getting yourself into. Is any other kind of tips around that?
I would really look to, some people might disagree with this, but I would really look at the educational side of things, and look at, not education is not everything. It's not, how many companies you've worked with. It's all relative. So I can't say specifically look at the education. But one thing I would say is when you're hiring a marketing firm, there's so much BS out there, and there's so much, especially in the marketing space, that you have to be so careful. And so not only when you're vetting client or vetting agencies or vetting entrepreneurs or whoever is going to be doing your stuff, it's really important to look at their past history as well, especially educationally. Have they just watched YouTube University and figured out how to do it, and this is their first year? Or do they have like the actual educational background or the M.B.A.? And not that that's everything, because I know a lot of people that have gone through MBAs that
you wouldn't
I don't know
hire.
how they got. I don't. But and same could be said about me. Maybe someone feels that way, but that's the one thing is I think there's so many pieces, and not just, hey, we got we got this law firm 3,000 clients for $50 per. Like, there's so many variables, and there's so much BS being thrown out of. Here's how we help this firm do this. It's a one-time situation. We have I'm sure you do. You have those anomalies where just everything fits together, everything works really well. And if we started promising our clients that we got them a 500% return on investment for this client, we can't guarantee that. No. And so that's where you can't base all your decisions off of how someone helped one person and now that's going to help you. If there's a magic button that you could press, everyone would have it. And so that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hire the right person, do the vetting, take a look at like what their experience in education is. Because I know both of us have MBAs, and it does give you a different approach. We do look at things on a different level, theoretically and practically, not just the tactics of like, let's just throw everything at it and see what works. There is something to understanding those principles and theories and all the case studies that we had to read. That was so fun.
Yes, I know. So that's where I think it's so important. So that's, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about too, but from my perspective, that's what I would recommend.
No, I would almost cut that part out, because absolutely you know what you're talking about. You've got an MBA, you've got clients, you know what has
the jury's still out on the clients. Maybe I lied to you about the clients. Just kidding.
Oh, all right. We're going to assume that you still have had the clients and you know what you're talking about. You've got the MBA. Okay, so Caleb Roche is the owner and strategist at C. Roche Consulting, and these are the pieces of a marketing strategy. This is what you need to do. Don't skip step one, as we said, countless times, but also consider that positioning. Think in terms of visually, in terms of Suits versus Better Call Saul, which is apparently trademarked, and do some research in terms of like how this all works and all the steps that you need to do in order to set that solid foundation of strategy and really get your marketing off to the right start. So thank you so much for being here. I feel like that was a great conversation, and this is going to be really well received.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the CouncilCast podcast. Be sure to visit our website at council-cast.com for the resources mentioned on the episode and to give us your feedback. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate if you could rate and review the podcast on Apple and subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. See you on the next one.